Ever get that feeling like something's just kind of dot off in your relationship? You know those uh-oh moments?
Yeah.
Where like your gut's saying one thing, but ignoring it feels easier.
Yeah.
We're diving into those tricky waters today.
Okay.
Trying to figure out when those little red flags might actually be like waving you towards the exit.
Right.
You sent over this piece called 9 Signs You Should Break Up With Your Girlfriend. And don't worry, guys listening, we're applying this universally. Relationships are messy no matter who you love, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's unpack this first sign, which honestly hit me right between the eyes. You aren't happy. It's easy to brush off those blah days, but the article describes this deeper sense of dread. Like dreading their calls, feeling obligated to even like breathe the same air. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. It's like, yeah.
It's like the relationship becomes this choreographed dance instead of a joyful free-for-all.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is that joy, that spark, it's not just a nice to have, it's the foundation. Relationships will always have ups and downs, but that baseline should be rooted in genuine excitement, right?
Yeah.
To share life together. When it flips to constant stress, feeling trapped, obligated, that's a sign something fundamental needs addressing.
Yes.
Right.
It's like choosing to eat stale bread every day when you could have a delicious feast. You deserve that feast. Okay, on to sign number 2, and it's a bit of a doozy, fantasizing about dating other people.
Okay.
We've all been there. You see a cute barista, watch a charming movie character, and bam, your mind wanders.
Sure.
But the article points out that it's the frequency that matters. Fleeting thought, normal. Constantly building castles in the sky with someone new, we might have a problem. What's your take on that?
Well, it's really the psychology behind it that I think is interesting. When we're genuinely engaged in our relationship, it fulfills certain emotional needs. But if those needs aren't met, our brain starts seeking them elsewhere, even if it's just in our imagination. So those persistent fantasies could be a sign that something crucial is missing in your current relationship, something you're subconsciously trying to fill.
It's like your inner voice is dropping hints, but in a much more exciting way than just saying, hey, I'm not satisfied.
Exactly.
It's saying, ooh, imagine if this was our life. And then you're left comparing reality to your own daydreams.
Yeah, and that's why paying attention to those daydreams, however fleeting, is so important. They can offer really valuable insight into what might be lacking in your current relationship and what you truly desire in a partner.
Deep stuff. This segues perfectly into sign number 3, that gut feeling of they're not the one. It's not always about glaring flaws, but more like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't quite fit, you know? The article mentions struggling to envision a future with them even during those someday conversations about marriage, kids, even just like growing old together.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
This speaks to the power of intuition, I think. Sometimes, despite our best efforts to rationalize or ignore it, there's this deep down knowing that this isn't our forever person. And it's not about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who feels aligned with our values, our goals, and our vision for the future. And ignoring that inner voice often leads to settling out of convenience or fear, which rarely results in long-term happiness.
And let's be real, no one wants to look back with regret thinking, what if I had trusted my gut? That's a whole lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas to unpack in therapy later. Speaking of things that can send us running to a therapist, let's talk about sign number 4, constant fighting. Now, disagreements are inevitable in any relationship. It's how we handle them that matters. But the article describes this exhausting cycle of arguing, making up, and then arguing about the same things all over again. It's like being stuck on a relationship roller coaster that only goes down.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, it's important to distinguish between healthy conflict resolution, which can actually strengthen a relationship, and chronic conflict that's rooted in deeper issues.
Okay.
If you're constantly fighting, especially about the same things, it suggests a breakdown in communication, incompatible values, or unresolved issues that keep resurfacing.
So it's not just about the fight itself, but what's fueling it that we need to pay attention to. It's like that saying, you can put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but it's not going to solve the problem.
Exactly. Instead of getting stuck in a cycle of reactivity, it's crucial to address the root cause of those conflicts. Are you avoiding difficult conversations? Are your core values fundamentally misaligned?
It's about digging deeper and asking ourselves, what's the real issue here? Sometimes the answer can be pretty illuminating, even if it's a little uncomfortable to face. This next one feels like a bit of a landmine, so let's tread carefully. Sign number 5 is about intimacy. But not just any intimacy. It's about that shift from something that brings you closer to something that feels like an obligation.
Right.
The article describes it as dreading intimacy rather than craving it, which can be a huge red flag.
Yeah, this sign is particularly interesting because it often reflects deeper emotional currents within the relationship.
Yep.
You know, physical intimacy thrives on emotional connection, a sense of safety, and mutual desire. When any of those elements are compromised, it's natural for physical intimacy to wane.
Yeah, it becomes like a choreographed dance rather than a passionate tango. Like, instead of it being the natural progression of a loving evening, it's the thing you do right before turning off the lights to avoid hurting your partner's feelings.
Right.
Ouch.
It's not uncommon for couples to experience fluctuations in their physical intimacy over time, and that's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
But a persistent decline, especially when accompanied by a sense of dread or obligation,
Right.
often signals deeper issues that need to be addressed.
Like that alarm bell going off in the back of your mind.
Yes.
Urging you to pay attention to the emotional temperature of your relationship. And speaking of setting up flags, sign number 6 is a big one, staying in the relationship out of obligation. The article gives the example of feeling pressure from friends and family, or like you owe your partner something because you've been together for so long. What are your thoughts on that?
It's the sunk cost fallacy in action. You know, we humans are hardwired to avoid loss, so we sometimes stay in situations, even unhealthy ones, simply because we've invested so much time, energy, or emotion. But staying with someone out of obligation, guilt, or fear of judgment only prolongs the inevitable.
It's like clinging to a life raft that's slowly sinking instead of swimming towards a shore where you can actually thrive.
Precisely. And it's not fair to either person involved. Staying in a relationship out of obligation prevents both partners from pursuing their own happiness and finding fulfilling connections based on genuine love and desire.
Yeah. Okay, this next sign really resonated with me because I think we've all experienced it to some degree. Sign number 7 is preferring solitude over spending time with your partner. It's not that you don't enjoy their company, but you find yourself actively seeking out alone time, maybe even making excuses to avoid, quality time together. Have you seen this?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating how our actions often betray our unspoken feelings, right?
Yeah.
When we're genuinely excited about spending time with someone, we prioritize them. But when we consistently find ourselves relieved to be apart, it suggests that the relationship itself has become a source of stress rather than a haven of comfort.
It's like that feeling of coming up for air after being underwater for too long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while alone time is essential for personal well-being, consistently preferring solitude over togetherness can be a sign that the relationship isn't providing the sense of connection and fulfillment it should.
And if we're being honest with ourselves, we all know that feeling deep down.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments where you're like dreading having to get ready for a date night because you'd rather just be home in your sweatpants watching like bad reality TV.
Absolutely, yeah. It's those subtle cues, those whispers of discontent that we often dismiss or rationalize away.
Right.
But paying attention to those feelings, however uncomfortable, can provide really valuable insight into the state of our relationship.
It's like our inner compass is trying to point us in the right direction, but we keep hitting the snooze button. Speaking of snooze buttons, this next sign might make some people want to hit theirs. Sign number 8 is about feeling like you're putting in more effort than your partner. The article describes it as always being the one to initiate contact, make plans, and basically carry the weight of the relationship. What do you think?
Yeah, this ties back to that concept of reciprocity we discussed earlier. Healthy relationships thrive on a sense of balance, where both partners feel equally invested in nurturing the connection.
Yeah.
When one person consistently carries the weight, resentment is bound to fester. It's like being on a seesaw with someone who's permanently glued to the ground. You're left perpetually in midair, putting in all the effort while they remain stationary.
Talk about exhausting. It's like running a marathon where you're the only one who remembers you signed up for a 2-person relay.
Right. And it's unsustainable in the long run. Relationships should energize us, inspire us, and bring out the best in ourselves. If you constantly feel depleted, unappreciated, and like you're carrying the relationship single-handedly, it's time to have an honest conversation about expectations, needs, and whether both partners are willing to invest in creating a more balanced dynamic.
So it's not about keeping score or expecting a perfectly even split at all times. It's about that overall feeling of being in it together.
Exactly.
Of knowing that both people are showing up and putting in the effort.
Yeah.
And finally, we come to a sign that's often more about our own internal fears than the relationship itself. Sign number 9, staying in the relationship out of fear of being single.
Right.
This one can be a real doozy because it taps into those deep-seated societal expectations and that nagging voice that says we're somehow less if we're not, part of a couple. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's a powerful fear, isn't it? The fear of being alone, starting over, facing judgment from others. But what's often overlooked is the incredible opportunity that being single presents. It's a chance to reconnect with ourselves, rediscover our passions, and define what we truly want in a partner, right?
Yes.
Without compromising our needs or settling for good enough.
It's like hitting the reset button on our lives. A chance to rewrite the narrative from I need someone to complete me to I'm already whole and I'm excited to share my life with someone who complements my journey.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective from fear to possibility. Being single isn't a waiting room for a relationship. It's a valuable chapter in its own right, full of growth, self-discovery, and the freedom to create a life we love with or without a partner.
So to anyone listening who might be resonating with some of these signs, remember that they're not a to-do list for an immediate breakup. They're more like those flashing dashboard lights in your car.
Right.
They're not telling you to abandon the vehicle, but they are signaling that something needs your attention.
Precisely. Trust your instincts. You know yourself and your needs better than anyone else. If something feels off, if you're constantly questioning your relationship or feeling unfulfilled, it's worth exploring those feelings, having those difficult conversations, and deciding together what's the best path forward.
It's about remembering that you deserve a love that lights you up, not dims your shine. A love that feels like coming home to yourself, not running away from something.
And sometimes the most loving act we can do for ourselves and our partners is to acknowledge when a relationship has run its course and create space for both people to find happiness, whether together or on separate paths.
Such wise words to end on. Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive. And to all our listeners out there, remember that you are worthy of a love that sets your soul on fire. Don't settle for lukewarm when you deserve a love that's scorching hot.